So today we're going to be going through one of the midos for Project Us. And the midah we're going to do today is the midah of Noseh B'Ol Chavero. Noseh B'Ol Chavero is a midah that is mentioned in Pirkei Avos as one of the 48 ways to be Kona Torah. The most famous example in the Torah of being Noseh B'Ol Chavero would be, exactly, Moshe. What does it say in the pasuk? Vayigdal Moshe, vayetze el echa, vayar b'sivlosa. Moshe goes out of his way to take and look and notice, and Rashi says, Nasan eino v'libo liyos meitzar aleha. That he didn't just look and he didn't just see, but he was willing to be meitzar. He was willing to feel. This led to HaKadosh Baruch Hu choosing Moshe, and he comes to Moshe in the sneh. Also, this midah of Noseh B'Ol Chavero, imo anochi b'tzara. So we see the importance right away of this midah of Noseh B'Ol Chavero. The ability to not just listen to your friend, understand your friend, but be willing to feel what your friend is feeling. This was what Moshe did that got him chosen. This was the act that led to ultimately the beginning of the Geula of Klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim. The difference between sympathy and empathy. Noseh B'Ol Chavero. To be willing to carry the burden of your friend. So this is pretty much what sympathy is. Sympathy is you're here and your friend is here going through a tough time. And you feel bad for them. You're here, they're there. Oy, Nebuch, I feel so bad. That's sympathy. A much higher madrega, a much deeper level of connecting is empathy. Empathy isn't you're here and your friend is here. In empathy, you're willing to get down to where they're at, into their life, into their situation, and you do not feel bad for them, you feel with them. To be willing to not just listen, not just understand. It's an unbelievable gift to give someone, to be willing to try to feel what it is that they feel. One of my favorite stories is a story of a Rebbe that I don't remember his name. And in this story, his Gabbai was very confused because every day this Rebbe would sit in his office and every night he'd finish and he'd look like he ran a marathon. And the Gabbai couldn't understand. He's sitting all day. What's he doing? Why is he schwitzing so much? And finally the Gabbai asked him, Rebbe, I don't understand. People come, they talk to you, you sit in your office all day, why are you schwitzing? The Rebbe said, what do you mean, what am I doing all day? Have you any idea the exertion that I go through every day? The Gabbai says, I don't understand. And what does the Rebbe say? The Rebbe says, Chatzkel comes into my office and he wants advice. And so the first thing I have to do before I give him advice is I have to take off my shtreimel, take off my gartel, take off my bekisha, I have to take off my Rebbe clothes, and I have to be willing to put on Chatzkel's pants and Chatzkel's tzitzis and Chatzkel's yarmulke. Because in order for me to really be able to give to him the way he needs to be given to, I need to know what it is that he's going through, what he feels, how he understands what's happening. And now that I'm wearing Chatzkel clothes, I understand him. But Chatzkel didn't come to get advice from Chatzkel. So now that I have an understanding of Chatzkel, I now take off his clothes. I take off his tzitzis and off his pants, and I put back on the Rebbe's clothes. But now the Rebbe can give the advice based on an understanding of who Chatzkel is. One of the things that holds us back from having a certain level of achdus is a certain way of thinking. I don't know if you've ever had such a thought cross your mind, but we're all very different, and we all have different nekudas habachira, and we have different nisyonos. And sometimes it's hard for us to relate to people who are coming with different personalities. And you might think to yourself, not say it out loud, but you might think to yourself the following thought. What's your problem? What's your problem? What's your problem? Obviously, this is not going to help us in Project Us. What's your problem? In fact, anytime you think that about another Jew, what's their problem? No offense, but you've just become one of their problems. They don't have a problem. They have an isayon. And it's our job to try to be able to put ourselves in their shoes, to take off our clothes, take off our sweatshirt, our uniform, and for a few minutes to put on their clothes and understand and appreciate why it's hard for them. No Jew wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a bad person. Chas v'sholom, every Jew wants to be good, to be able to understand and appreciate why for them this is an isayon. Because once you understand they don't have a problem, they have an isayon, now you could be part of their solution instead of chas v'sholom, part of their problem. Noseh B'Ol Chavero. When someone asks you for a favor, before you answer, to let yourself imagine what it's like to be them. Put yourself in their shoes and understand why they needed to ask you that question. What was their state of need? To put yourself in the position of a harried mother. to put yourself in the position of a person who has to study the same thing 10 times longer than you do to get the same grade. If we would just do that for just a few moments, we would become much more generous people. One of the most amazing examples of Nosei B'Ol Chavero I've ever witnessed happened, not surprisingly, with one of my students. So my first year teaching, I taught 7th and 8th grade in a school where the children, where the girls, did not come from religious homes. And many of them did not keep Shabbos or Kashrus yet, and they barely knew Hebrew. And for me, where to begin? There's so much to teach. And so the first thing I wanted to teach them was how to talk to Hashem, how to daven. And one of the things we would daven every day was Tehillim. And so I had a rule in my class that every day, if you had a name for Tehillim, you'd come up, you would tell us the name, you would tell us who it was and what was wrong with them. Which is, of course, very personal, but it made it real. And as the girls would get up, one would say, it's her father, it's her uncle, it's her cousin, it's her mother, it's her sister. And one day, one of my students came up to me and said, Ms. Garfinkel, I have a question. You know that paragraph that you say for the sick people before we say, the other paragraphs that we say? Yes. So will I also say something to Hashem while you're saying that paragraph, and I want to know if it's okay. I said, what do you say? She said, this is what I say. I say, Hashem, God, if there's someone on this list and it's getting really bad, and God, you know what really bad means. Please, Hashem, I give you permission to take some of my health and give it to them. I don't want anyone on this list, chas v'shalom, not to make it. Could you imagine? So of course I burst out crying. And immediately I explained to her, she doesn't have to lose for another Jew to gain. Hashem is kal from the word die. Hashem has enough health for all of us. We would just be able to bring down that shefa. And I cried and I said, I've been saying Tehillim my whole life. And even though I understand the translation of the words, and you barely understand the translations of the words, you understand what it means to say Tehillim better than I ever will. That she allowed herself to not just hear, listen, understand. She was nosei. She allowed herself to feel what it must be like to be that person, or to be that person's daughter, or sister, or wife, or mother. And it pained her to the point that it was worth it to her to give up some of her health than to hear, chas v'shalom, that this person passed away. Practical applications. How to work on this midah of Nosei B'Ol Chavero. 3 practical ideas. Number 1, to daven every day for someone other than yourself. To pick a specific time of day, whether it's during mincha, whether it's at night when you say Shema, that there's going to be a person that you not only daven for, but you imagine what it's like to be in whatever matzav they're in. And after feeling what it must be like to be in that matzav, from there you call out and you ask Hashem to help that person. There's a beautiful Gemara in Bava Kama that says, someone who davens on behalf of their friend and needs the same thing, they get answered first. So it's interesting, what difference does it make if you need the same thing? As long as you daven for someone else, what difference does it make? Because the level of empathy that you can have for someone who needs the same thing, you know what it's like more than anybody else. For someone else, you can have sympathy, you feel bad for them. But when you need the same thing, you don't just have sympathy, you have empathy. You feel with them, you know better than anyone else what it's like to have to deal with that kind of situation. And so you will daven from a place of genuine caring and feeling. Second practical eitzah. We want to work on Nosei B'Ol Chavero. We have to become listeners. Truly listen to our friends and not listen for the purpose of even solving their problem. Although hopefully we'll be able to do that at another time. But to do what's called empathetic listening, where your whole purpose of listening is to listen, understand, and to feel. I like to give the mashal for myself that when somebody comes to me that's very upset and in pain, that I imagine that they were dunked into this big, deep, massive pool of raging water, and they're totally buffeted by these powerful waves of emotions. And one of the most important things for them is for you to, so to speak, pull the plug and drain some of that water away. So that's number 2, to truly listen with the goal of understanding and feeling with them. And the last one is, let's abolish the minhag of saving seats for each other. Even though on the surface it seems like Avas Yisrael, I'm thinking about somebody else, I'm saving this person a seat. What we don't realize is, yes, you're saving this person a seat, you're showing how machshav you are of that person, but what about all the people that then come to sit down in that seat and you turn to them and say, very pashut, saved seat, no, it's saved for somebody else. Yes, you're being matched with the person you're saving a seat for, but what are you clearly telling the other person? And just for 1 second, remember what it was like if you'd ever want to sit down somewhere and someone said very matter-of-factly, seat saved. How did that feel? Exactly. So let's be machshiv, not just a friend. Let's be machshiv each other. If you're chalshing to talk to the person, so make sure that you go down to the assembly at the same time. You're chalshing to sit by this person at a chagiga, go down at the same time. Project Us. There should be not a single girl in your school that you wouldn't want to sit next to for a few minutes. Let's stop saving seats. Let's really listen for the purpose of absorbing and helping people carry the pain that they carry. Let's daven for each other. Let's feel for each other. And in the merit that we listen to each other's pain, Hashem will be able to tackle also do imo and ochi b'tzara. And we should be able to have, just like Moshe did it, and it led to Geulas Mitzrayim, we should do it, and it should lead to our Geula, B'mheira, B'meinu, Amen.